Today's lesson is tourist hotspots struggling with over-tourism. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And we're talking about traveling in today's lesson. And of course, traveling is something that people all over the world want to do. It's on our bucket list. We've got all these different places we want to go to and these things we want to try. But unfortunately, so many people have the same idea that some places just get too many tourists. Yeah, I want to go see those temples in Kyoto. I've got to see these things before I die. And everybody has the same idea. So, yeah, we have this thing called over-tourism, too many tourists.
Absolutely. We've all seen the pictures, often during the summer peak travel months, July, August. We've seen those pictures of the crowds filling St. Mark's Square in Venice so you can't even move, or the people all trying to get their shot with their smartphones or their phone cameras of the Mona Lisa, and there's just this crowd of heads with arms and phones, so you can't actually get even close to the painting to see it. So over-tourism is definitely an issue, and it's kind of becoming a bit of a problem in certain parts of the world. The popular places, the places that are very Instagrammable. Everyone wants to get that social media snap of themselves in that famous place. So it's great for those places to a degree, but it also takes a lot of patience from the locals, and of course it can cause a lot of environmental damage, and it can really just lead to a bad travel experience. So we're going to have a look at some different tourist hotspots or popular places to visit in the world are struggling with being too loved, really. They're popular because people love them, but maybe we're loving them a little too much. Let's find out all about this very interesting and very contemporary issue.
Tourist hotspots struggling with over-tourism. Over-tourism, by no means a new phenomenon, has worsened in recent years. The rise of affordable air travel and increasing incomes have driven a surge in visitors to tourist hotspots. While these locations may welcome the additional tourist cash, many also suffer unwanted side effects.
大家好，第一部分介绍片语 by no means， 它表示绝非或是一点也不。可以说 Nelly was hopeful he would get the new job, but it was by no means a guarantee. Nelly 希望获得这份新工作，但绝非保证。再来看到名词 surge， 它的意思是急剧上升或是激增。例如 A recent surge in fuel prices has caused concern among drivers. 最近燃料价格的急剧上涨引起了驾驶人的担忧。或者 There's usually a surge in online shopping every year during the holiday season. 每年圣诞节假期间，线上购物通常会骤升。
All right, now the first paragraph basically tells us what over-tourism is. Over-tourism, by no means a new phenomenon, has worsened in recent years. Okay, so it's getting worse and worse. It's not a new phenomenon, of course, it's been going on for a long time. People have wanted to travel since time immemorial, okay? For thousands of years, people want to wander about the world and just see what's out there. So it's not a new phenomenon. Of course, people kind of crowd into the more popular places, but it has worsened in recent years. I would probably say that as a result of the COVID pandemic, people were crammed up inside their homes for so long. Now they've got cabin fever, and they really want to get out and explore. So that's probably why there are so many tourists going around the world now, in addition to the other reasons. But yes, indeed, it has gotten worse in recent years.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, it could be very acute these days because, as you said, people didn't get to travel. And then you add in social media, kind of promoting certain places more than others. And as the article says next, the rise of affordable air travel and increasing incomes have driven a surge in visitors to tourist hotspots. More airlines flying to more destinations, many of them the same destinations, providing low-cost flights. And of course, people in many parts of the world now, people who live in places in South America or Africa or places in Asia where they didn't have the money to do this a generation or two ago. Now they have the money, they have the means to get there. The airlines are providing the tickets and the seats. And so people are flocking to the places that we mentioned. Of course, we can throw in a lot of other popular places. I think there was that town in Japan that was banning tourists because they were all stopping and taking a picture of Mount Fuji behind a convenience store, and it was causing problems with traffic. I mean, some of them are predictable. Some of them are very random and strange, places that tourists are suddenly surging to. When you have a surge of something, you have a large volume of something moving through in a very quick time. When we think of a flood, that's kind of a surge of water down a dry riverbed can cause flooding or something like that. Or sometimes when we talk about festivals, right? Often when there's a lot of religious pilgrims and whatnot, there could be a surge of people through an area, and that can cause a crush or a stampede or something like that. Or, of course, there can also just be a surge of interest in something. If a celebrity takes up a new hobby and they're very popular and famous, then all of a sudden everyone wants to do this new sport or this new hobby. There'll be a surge, a sudden rush of interest in something. So a surge of tourists to these hot spots, these popular locations. It says, while these locations may welcome the additional tourist cash, of course, it's good for the local economy, many also suffer unwanted side effects. So it's hard to manage all of these people when we're talking about places that are very small, like that island of Santorini in Greece with the beautiful white buildings, the blue roofs, and they just have too many people there. You can't move around. Of course, you can't find a hotel or a table in a restaurant, but in many places, it's hard to even move around these places. So there are unwanted side effects. It's squeezing the local people out. It's damaging the local environment. It's affecting the local infrastructure. Kids can't get to school. Workers can't do their jobs just because there are too many tourists. So let's find out all about this, starting with one of the most famous places for being too loved.
In Venice, the poster child for over-tourism, visitors are blamed for pushing up the cost of renting and forcing locals out of the city. In Hokkaido, residents complain about tourists littering, trespassing, and just generally behaving badly. Closer to home, over-tourism on Taiwan's Little Liuqiu has damaged the island's ecology, its primary attraction. As Little Liuqiu shows, addressing over-tourism can be vital to the protection of a location's appeal. However, it has been difficult to find effective solutions. When the island introduced tourist fees to limit visits to protected beaches, travelers simply visited unprotected beaches instead. Elsewhere, authorities have tried everything from banning new hotels and taxing visitors to even hiring guards to police visitor behavior.
第二部分看到名词 resident 表示居民或是住户，例如 Gavin has been a resident of the city since he was a child. Gavin 从小就是这个城市的居民。或是 In a small town like this one, all of the residents know one another. 在这样的小镇里，所有居民都彼此认识。继续看到动词 trespass， 它的意思是擅自闯入或是侵入。例如The security guard caught the teenagers trespassing in the closed amusement park. 保全抓到了那些擅自进入关闭游乐园的青少年。也可以说 The sign clearly states that trespassing is strictly prohibited. 标志上清楚标明严禁擅自闯入。接着介绍名词 ecology， 表示生态环境或是生态学。可以说Building a road along the coast could have negative effects on the ecology of animals in the area. 沿着海岸修建道路可能会对该区的动物生态产生负面影响。又或者说 Protecting forests is key to maintaining the planet's ecology. 保护森林对维持地球的生态环境至关重要。后面看到形容词 vital， 它的意思是必不可少的或是极其重要的。例如Access to clean water is vital for the health of the community. 获得干净的水对社区的健康至关重要。再看一个例子 It is vital that you lock the front door when you leave the house. 离开家时锁上前门极其重要。最后我们看到副词 elsewhere， 指的是在别的地方或是到别的地方。举例来说 When the factory closed, people left town to seek work elsewhere. 工厂关闭后人们离开城镇到别处寻找工作。又或者说 If they don't have the book you want here, we can go look elsewhere. 如果他们这里没有你想要的书，我们可以到别处看看。
Okay, in the second part, of course, as you might have guessed, we're going to talk about Venice. So anytime they talk about over-tourism, they always seem to mention Venice. Okay, that's a city that's on the edge of the sea, and it's got those canals and things like that. And, of course, lots of people want to go there. But in Venice here, it's the poster child for over-tourism. Visitors are blamed for pushing up the cost of renting and forcing locals out of the city. So here we're talking about Venice, and we're saying that it is the poster child for over-tourism. This is an interesting term, the poster child. If something is on a poster, that means it's very important and you want to put it on your wall. So if it's a poster child, it's something that represents the top part of something, the most famous part of something. So, of course, Venice is that poster child. Okay, it's the most popular thing. You want to put that poster on your wall. And in this particular case, though, it is the poster child for over-tourism. It's the biggest example that we have of over-tourism in the world.
Well, it's a very small city. Of course, it's built out there in the water on sort of reclaimed land, so there isn't a lot of space to build new giant hotels. So many of the hotels are already full, and of course, with Airbnb now being a popular accommodation website where people can find a place to stay, a lot of the local people are renting out their homes to tourists, and your landlord might kind of kick you out even if you've been living there as a local Venice resident and citizen for many years. Your landlord might kick you out of that rented apartment because they wanted to turn it into an Airbnb or something like that. So that's why it's forcing locals out of the city. People who've lived there for a long time can no longer afford to live there because housing has now been turned into tourist housing. So that is definitely a big problem, and it is a challenging thing because you don't want the tourists to go away, and of course they will keep coming, but you also don't want the city to lose its local flavor by having it just be tourists and tour guides and people selling things and no locals at all in any real sense. All right, now let's move on to Hokkaido, in a country that I know Roger is a big friend of, Japan.
Well, I've never been to Hokkaido. That, of course, is that big island in the north of Japan. Lots of people like to go there for skiing or to look at those lavender flowers or whatever it's popular for. Residents there complain about tourists littering, trespassing, and just generally behaving badly. Okay, so these are people who live in Hokkaido. And as a person from the country myself, sometimes we just enjoy the fact that it's far away from the big cities, it's kind of clean, and it's very quiet. So if I were a resident of Hokkaido, I would probably not really like this sudden surge of tourists there. So if you live someplace, you are a resident, and the residents of Hokkaido complain about tourists. And what they do is they litter, they trespass, and they just don't behave themselves. So if you litter, of course, you've got your trash and you just throw it around. I guess Japan is notorious for not having public places to throw out your trash like we do here in Taipei. If you bought something from 7-Eleven and you're finished eating it and you're on the sidewalk, well, you don't have to go too far to find a place to throw out your trash. But I guess in Japan that's kind of difficult. So sometimes people think, oh, gee, I could just keep this and take it home with me later to the hotel or something. But I'll just throw it out here. I'll just litter. No one's going to know it was me. And so people, of course, are littering, and people in Japan, as you know, love cleanliness, so they probably resent that. And also, tourists are trespassing, which means they're going inside of places they're not supposed to be going into. I think there have been some instances of people climbing up on statues or something like that, or defacing property, writing things on them or whatever. So, indeed, if I were from Hokkaido, I would resent that behavior.
Yes, and of course, Japanese people are, by their culture, known to be very neat and very polite and generally quiet people. So to have these loud, drunken American, Canadian, Australian, wherever tourists there throwing their garbage on the ground and just kind of walking into places they shouldn't be and just generally being loud, this is something that's kind of upset people. Of course, as Roger mentioned, Hokkaido is not downtown Tokyo. It's a pretty quiet part of the world generally. So to have this sudden surge or this sudden inrush of tourists there who are on ski holidays and other things, it can definitely be upsetting to the local people because there's a lot of cultural clashing going on there. And then we read closer to home, which probably means in our home country here, over-tourism on Taiwan's Little Liaoqiu has damaged the island's ecology, its primary attraction. So one of the main reasons people go are to see the beautiful beaches and caves and other things they have down there. But with tourists walking around and collecting shells to bring home swim with them or climbing on things that they shouldn't, damaging the coral that might be in the waters around Little Liocho, and upsetting birds and other native species that might live there. This is what we're talking about when we say ecology. All of the plants and animals and other things that sort of make up the environment, the natural environment in a certain place. And as we all remember from our science classes, it's a big connected web, right? It's a big connection. So if we're damaging the rocks where the birds normally nest, they can't lay their eggs, and then the next generation of birds can't be born, or things like that. So if people are just looking at things, that's great. But if they're taking things or damaging things and going places that are sort of environmentally threatened or something like that, it can really damage the ecology. And that is, as it says, the primary attraction. So once the beaches get spoiled and covered in garbage, or just over-tourism with hotels and resorts everywhere, people aren't going to go.
Here, moving on to the next paragraph, it says, as Little Liocho shows, addressing over-tourism can be vital to the protection of a location's appeal. Okay, so if something's vital, it's very, very important. It is key. It is crucial. It is essential. They need to really pay attention to the protection of the appeal of the place. And yes, indeed, of course, they want to attract tourist dollars. But of course, the attraction of Xiao Liuqiu is those natural areas. But if so many people go to those areas, they will harm the ecology. So yes, indeed, we need to protect those areas. And this is a good example. However, it has been difficult to find effective solutions. Yeah, what do you do? People want to go there. They want to check it out. You can't just stop them. So yeah, it's very difficult to figure out ways to limit the damage that tourists are causing. When the island introduced tourist fees to limit visits to protected beaches, travelers simply visited unprotected beaches instead. Okay, so yeah, tourists aren't dumb. They know what's going on, and they want to save some money. And if they say you can't go someplace, well, if I can't go there, then I'm going to go someplace else. Try to stop me,
So yes, they will find other places to visit, and of course those places will now suffer ecological damage. Elsewhere, we read authorities have tried everything from banning new hotels and taxing visitors to even hiring guards to police visitor behavior. So they've been trying to come up with creative solutions that can both keep the tourism industry, the local industry, healthy, but also protect the island, the land, the ecology for future generations. So elsewhere just means in other places. We're still talking about Xiao Liuqiu, but this could also be true for other parts of the world where they're suffering from over-tourism. There's lots of creative ideas that people have come up with to try to keep tourism under control. So elsewhere in other places, authorities have tried everything from banning hotels and taxing visitors to hiring guards. When we say authorities, we're generally meaning government people, people who have the ability to make laws and rules and regulations and then enforce them. So they've tried everything. They've tried numerous different things, from banning new hotels. When you ban something, you stop it from happening. You prevent it from happening. You make a rule that says you can't do that. So no new hotels can be built in Xiao Liuqiu, and I know this is true in other parts of the world. There are already too many. We're going to tax the visitors. So if you're arriving on a boat, you'll have to basically pay a ticket, like an entry fee, as you would in a museum or something like that, to go to the island for a day or two. And they've even hired guards to try to police visitor behavior. So when you visit a local beach, they might not have a police officer there. There'll be a private security company. But in the same way, in a museum, they'll have guards there to stop you from touching the paintings or climbing on the art or something like that. They have the same kind of thing. And this is to try to police or to control or to regulate visitor behavior, the actions that visitors take. So we don't want people polluting on the beach and littering on the beach and things like that. So it definitely is something that makes sense, but it's also unfortunate that it has to happen this way.
Let's move on now to the third part. We will listen first.
While these policies have had varying degrees of success, the underlying challenge remains unanswered. How can we best balance the benefits of tourism with the need to protect the environment and maintain locals' quality of life?
Okay, here's the final paragraph for today. It says, while these policies have had varying degrees of success, the underlying challenge remains unanswered. Okay, so yes, indeed, sometimes these policies work, sometimes they don't, but we still have this underlying challenge. If something's underlying, it's still there, it's not going away. And yes, indeed, this is still a big challenge for lots of places all over the world. How can we best balance the benefits of tourism with the need to protect the environment and maintain locals' quality of life? Indeed, locals want to have those tourist dollars, but of course they don't want to have their location totally destroyed by tourists because that would be shooting themselves in the foot, so to speak. And of course, if they destroy the environment, they won't have tourist dollars in the future. So yeah, what can they do? Maybe this is something that you can all discuss amongst yourselves. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分提到，在威尼斯，游客被指责推升了租金成本，迫使当地人离开这座城市。那文中是用 Visitors are blamed for pushing up 什么什么来表达游客被指责推升了点点点。那我们这边来整理动词 blamed 的用法。blame 它当动词有责怪、怪罪或者是归咎的意思。那可以用 blame 加上某人或某事物for something 去表达把什么怪罪于某人或某事物，将什么归咎于某人或某事物。那它也可以改写成 blame something on 加上某人或某事物。那其中这个怪罪的事情，我们可以用名词或动名词去表达。举例来说， Ron always blames others for his own mistakes. Ron 老是把自己的错怪到别人身上。另外也可以用某人事物加上 be to blame for something 来表达某人事物应该为什么负责，什么什么是某人事物所造成。举例来说， Who is to blame for this problem? 谁该为这个问题负责？好，那课文下一句提到，在北海道，居民抱怨游客乱丢垃圾，擅闯私人土地。那文中用到 trespass 这个动词来表达擅自闯入、侵入。我们来学习它的字首字根。先看到字根 pass， 它有通过、传递、流逝或是通道等等的意思。像 passage 表示通道、道路，还有像其他一些道路设施 overpass 它是天桥、高架道路，或者是 underpass 是地下道等等，它们都跟通道有关。那么在 trespass 这个字当中， tres 它是源自于拉丁文的字首 trans， 那这部分表示跨越或是超出。字根 pass 表示通道，那么超出可以走的通道范围，跨越到禁止通行的地方，这样应该可以联想到 trespass 它有擅自进入、侵入，像是侵入他人土地啊、建筑物等等。好，那顺便补充几个相同字根的单字。第一个passport， 好，那它的字根 pass 表示通过，字尾 port 表示港口。同学们可以试着把 port 想成 airport 机场，毕竟机场又叫空港嘛，就像是飞机的港口。那我们要出入机场、通过机场就要有身份证明，所以 passport 就是指护照。第二个补充的是 password， 它的字根 pass 表示通过， word 是文字。那么能让你通行的文字就是密码咯。第三个补充的是 surpass， 它的字首 sur 它是从 super 变形而来，这部分表示超过或是在什么上方。字根 pass 表示通过、经过，那合在一起 surpass 就表示超越、胜过、优于的意思。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Surge.A surge of excitement ran through the crowd when the band started playing. Resident. Only residents of the city will be allowed to vote in the election for mayor. Ecology. Rapid urban development can negatively affect the natural ecology of rivers and forests. Vital. Regular exercise and a good diet play vital roles in maintaining good health. Elsewhere. Scarlett couldn't find work in her hometown,so she ended up having to look elsewhere for job opportunities. Authority. The local authorities provided food, shelter, and medicine to families affected by the earthquake. Ban. In many schools, students are banned from using phones during class. Behavior. A child's behavior is often significantly influenced by the behavior of their peers.
Discussion Starter starts now.
Here's our discussion starter. The question is, what measure would you suggest to address over-tourism? How could that help?
I would suggest some kind of public-private cooperation, the government and hotel companies or holiday resort travel companies working together. This could help by allowing the private companies maybe to open up new areas to tourism, areas where they don't have a lot of tourism. They could help develop that. And the government could help by maybe advertising some of these new efforts to try to just sort of spread the tourism around in the country a little bit more. Because I'm sure there are wonderful natural places in any country that are still kind of undiscovered. So we can kind of maybe open up a few new areas, take pressure off the popular areas, and both the government and private companies could benefit.
Well, I think over-tourism could be reduced by encouraging people to stay home and find out things that are of interest in your local country. Lots of people in Taiwan, of course, like traveling overseas to other countries, but hey, there are lots of things to check out here in good old Taiwan, and even in your old neighborhood, in your current neighborhood, you can check out things there. And yes, you don't need to spend money on expensive plane tickets, just stay home. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.